From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Researchers are using new methods to aid investigations into deadly strikes by pilotless planes called drones. The United Nations wants independent investigations into drone attacks. They estimate that there were 3 times as many civilian deaths from drones last year as the year before. But it is difficult to know the effect on civilians because the attacks are often in lightly populated areas. Scientists from Goldsmiths, University of London, and SitU Research in New York are trying to learn more. They have been gathering evidence to create 3D moving images of drone attacks. They call the process forensic architecture. The researchers use satellite images of places before and after an attack. They also examine reports from witnesses, local maps, and other information. The goal is to help investigations into drone strikes that happened in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, Gaza, and Somalia. The research will be included in a United Nations report on the legality of drone operations. Kat Craig is the legal director for the charity organization Reprieve. She says the United States and other drone users have offered little information about such operations. She says there is no openness about the drone attack targets or results. Douglas Murray is the Associate Director of the Henry Jackson Society, a policy research group based in London. He says drones are the best choice of bad choices to try to deal with radicals and terrorists. The United Nations says U.S. drone attacks on Pakistan appear to have decreased. But the UN says drone strikes have increased in Yemen. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. The United Nations reports that more than 3.3 million people are now experiencing food insecurity in Sudan. That number is expected to rise soon to 4 million. About 11% of the country's estimated 34 million people would be affected. The UN Food and Agriculture Agency, or FAO, says fighting, displacement, and poor harvests prevent many people from receiving food. Roseanne Markasic represents the FAO in Sudan. She says Sudan's harvest has ended early and the amount of locally available food is decreased. She says food support is needed in millions of Sudanese homes. She says conflicts in the Blue Nile, South Kordofan, and Darfur areas have added to food insecurity. Hundreds of thousands of people have fled the violence. Ms. Markasic says poor weather conditions also affect food security. Long, extremely dry periods in Sudan are followed by floods. Low food supplies in parts of Sudan have caused a sudden rise in food prices. Meat prices, for example, are up 84%. Vegetable prices have risen by 40%. and the cost of transporting food has increased by 70%. Conflict in neighboring South Sudan also hurts the food situation. Refugees continue to cross the border and enter camps in Sudan. The FAO official says it is very important to continue to provide the camp populations with seeds and farm supplies. And the refugees need the same when they return home. Ms. Markasic says Sudan needs thousands of metric tons of seed and almost 1 million agricultural tools. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Persutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. During 3 months in 1994, 800,000 Rwandans were killed in attacks led by ethnic Hutu militias. Many organizations around the world are observing the 20th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide. One of these groups is the Shoah Foundation Student Association at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. It invited survivors to share their memories of the horrific event. Yannick Tona was one of the speakers. He has been traveling the world to talk about the genocide. He told the USC students what happened in his country and to his family. He was only 4 years old at the time. He said he hid in bushes and heard screams. He said he saw a lot of big knives, blood, and bodies on the street everywhere. Mr. Tona's 1-year-old brother and his grandmother were killed. Rwandan Edith Umugiraneza said she struggled with what is called survivor guilt. She said she did not understand why she lived, and her mother, brothers, and other relatives did not. Miss Umugiraneza now lives in the United States. She said prayer and sharing stories with other survivors has helped her heal. Her story is a part of the video records at the Foundation's Institute for Visual History and Education. The Institute has been collecting stories of genocide survivors from several countries. It hopes to gather 500 stories for Rwanda. It has collected 65 so far. The Institute is also involved with Kwibuka 20, a series of events to observe the 20th anniversary. Organizer Stephen Smith says people all around the world are talking about genocide and what they can do about it. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb. From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. For years, Somalia has been called a failed state. Piracy, poverty, and terrorism have been problems in the country for a long time. But recent improvements suggest that the country is taking steps toward lasting security. Somali officials say a stronger economy is extremely important to peace. In April, Somali officials traveled to the United Arab Emirates, hoping to attract foreign investment. The event, called the Somalia Investment Summit, was held in Dubai. the goal was to present Somalia as a good place to invest. Somalia is still dealing with the effects of a 20-year civil war. Foreign intervention is the main cause of increased security in the country. Over the past year, African Union troops helped drive al-Shabaab militants from major cities. And international naval forces have sharply decreased pirate attacks. But Ali Mohammed Getty warns that the results of these efforts could be temporary. Mr. Getty is the former Prime Minister of Somalia's transitional federal government. He says poverty must be ended. He says poverty is the reason young people join al-Shabaab. The chairman of the Somali Economic Forum, Hassan Dude, agrees. He says the pull of illegal activity, such as piracy, is strong when there are no jobs available. Although conditions in Somalia are improving, safety threats remain. Somalia lacks a central government. Corruption is common. And the workforce is largely unskilled. These problems concern possible investors. Also, there are no secure legal safeguards for foreign investors. Currently, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Yemen are the top investors in Somalia. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb. From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. Vietnam is working to meet goals for food production and food security. In doing so, the government supports use of pesticides and other chemicals on crops. Farmers use these substances to help crops grow and protect them from insects and other threats. Signs along roads in Vietnam say, "Do not abuse pesticides. Think of the buyer." But the government has few rules restricting the use of pesticides. Some Vietnamese are so worried about the issue that they buy food only from growers they know. There is a website that can help food shoppers. It lists stores in Hanoi that sell safe vegetables. The Vietnamese buyers group, Vinastas, set up the website in 2011. Dong Khiem Hien is part of the team that runs the site. She says stores have to meet requirements to be included on the website. For example, they must prove they get their vegetables from farmers who do not use chemicals. Ms. Dong says a store will be removed from the list if it does not obey the rules. Eduardo Sabio is with VICO, a Belgian non-government agricultural group. It supports the local website. Mr. Sabio says pesticide misuse in Vietnam is a real problem. He says there is a process to confirm that products are free of man-made chemicals, but he says it is too costly for farmers. Mr. Sabio says the Safe Food website uses what is known as the Participatory Guidance System. It supervises food safety through quality reports from farmers groups, traders, and local officials. The system is used in more than 20 countries around the world. And, Mr. Sabio says, Vietnamese farmers keep detailed notes about their pesticide use. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. For many years, immigrants have sought better lives for themselves in New York City. Now, a new study says that immigrants also have helped the city's economy remain strong. New York is in many ways a city of immigrants. The mayor's office says the group makes up more than 40% of New York's population. The Americas Society Council of the Americas, or ASCOA, is a group that explores issues affecting the Americas. It supported a recent study about how immigrants affect New York City's economy. The study looked at immigration records and neighborhood police reports between 1990 and 2010. The report's author, Jacob Vigdor, says New York City's economy and the quality of life improved during that period. He says immigrants move into aging, troubled neighborhoods because housing is less costly. Then he says the new residents improve the area. He says, in turn, crime rates drop. Robert Sampson is a social policy professor at Harvard University. He says immigrants who take risks to get to America are less likely to take part in crime and more likely to work hard. Immigrant businesses also help to drive growth in New York. ASCOA's Kate Brick says immigrants are more willing to accept lower-paying, less desirable jobs than non-immigrants. Jacob Vigdor says all immigrants help support the economy in some way by paying sales tax and property taxes. ASCOA hopes the report will influence other U.S. cities to welcome immigrants in ways that help everyone. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Americans are interested in exercise. When an exercise method promises to help a person lose weight or get fit, it can become very popular very quickly. We call these exercise trends. One current is CrossFit. CrossFit is a company and training program established in California in the 1970s. The number of CrossFit centers, or gyms, has doubled every 2 years. And not just in the U.S. There are CrossFit gyms in South America, Europe, and Asia too. CrossFit is a program that works the entire body, and it is not an easy one. CrossFit is known as one of the hardest training programs in the exercise world. The U.S. Marines, professional sports teams, fire departments, and police forces use CrossFit. But it is also popular with people who work in office jobs. CrossFit uses weight training and movement like running and jumping. The movements are simple, but performed at a very intense level. Kate Garuffi is a trainer at District CrossFit in Washington, D.C. She says the goals are to get stronger, improve the heart and blood system, and become looser. There are more than 8,500 CrossFit gyms worldwide. People train in groups in the CrossFit program. Results are measured by how long it takes to complete a set of exercises. CrossFit group members say they began to feel like a family. They get support from each other, but also added pressure. Members say they do not want to fail their group. Critics say CrossFit has a high rate of injury. Members can experience muscle damage, especially shoulder injuries. But CrossFit supporters say a good trainer can help people avoid injuries. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. There are increasing calls for lawmakers to reconsider copyright laws that protect the owners of 3D printing designs. But there is also concern that extensive laws could suppress new ideas. 3D printers have spread from scientific labs to industrial workshops to private homes. And prices of 3D printers continue to drop. Designers demonstrate a large number of different machines at 3D print shows. There are models that can produce complex copies of human organs. There are less costly 3D printers that make toys for children or parts for home electrical devices. One German automaker recently demonstrated how the structure of a car could be printed in one piece. And a Chinese manufacturer advertised a house created with a 3D printer. Almost anyone can print exact copies of many kinds of objects with the help of a computer. But they also might violate the law in doing so. Julie Samuels is a lawyer with the civil liberties group Electronic Frontier Foundation. She says people should be careful about what they create with 3D printers. She says printing a design that is protected by copyright might be a violation of law. 3D companies are concerned about restrictive copyright protection laws. They say restrictive copyright laws could violate the rights of citizens. They argue also that such laws might suppress technological invention. The lack of legislation on 3D printing will not stop the technology from spreading. Experts in the field say they hope new laws will not punish people for printing 3D objects for personal use. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Ketamine is a drug that puts people and animals into a deep sleep. Doctors inject it into patients so they can be operated on. However, ketamine may prove useful for mental health too. A new study shows that the anesthesia drug may help people who suffer from depression. Researchers in Britain studied 28 patients suffering from severe depression. Most of the patients experienced a major ease in the effects of depression after receiving ketamine injections. Rupert McShane led the study. He says 8 of the 28 patients injected got good results. And Dr. McShane reported that 3 of those 8 said they felt better just hours after getting 1 injection of ketamine. The drug's apparent effects lasted 1 to 6 months. Researchers in the United States have carried out 6 larger studies on ketamine and depression. They found the drug quickly eased the effects of a kind of depression that is usually resistant to treatment. Carlos Zarate is a researcher with the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health. He says there are 30 different kinds of antidepressant drugs on the market, but he says a single kind will not ease all the effects of the disorder. As a result, Mr. Zarate says most patients with depression are treated with more than one antidepressant. The researcher says ketamine directly targets a brain chemical linked to depression. He says traditional antidepressants target that chemical only indirectly. The British study of ketamine was published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. The United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, prepares young men and women to become officers in the Navy or Marine Corps. The school was established in 1845 on land where a military fort once stood. Students are called midshipmen. The Naval Academy provides undergraduates 4 years of study in 25 major areas. Degrees in science, technology, engineering, or mathematics are especially popular. Many Naval Academy graduates have become important American leaders. Former President Jimmy Carter, for example, was a midshipman. Senator John McCain, a former presidential candidate, also graduated from the school. Foreign students also attend the Naval Academy. Currently, there are about 60 of them. David Ochi is from Panama. He says it is difficult to learn a new language and get used to a different culture. Student Santiago Gonzalez Ayer of Spain says the Academy has helped him feel more a part of that new culture. The Naval Academy says its job is to develop a student's skills, character, and understanding of others. International Program Director Tim Disher says the U.S. Navy gains from the Academy's foreign students. He graduated from the Naval Academy in 1981. He says at that time, only top officers worked with foreign officers and foreign navies. But he says this is no longer true. He says the exchange program helps American midshipmen understand the wider world. Midshipman Gonzalez Ayer plans to serve as a naval officer when he returns to Spain. David Ochi wants to work as an ocean engineer back in Panama. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.